Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Wanted to just underscore some of what's said. I think the fact that there's close to 400 high school and college students sitting here today is incredible, especially that you're sitting alongside some of the folks in local government who are making a difference in your community. And part of what I'm going to talk about today is the role that each of you can play in helping advance your community to become more innovative, to become more responsive, and to better utilize technology in today's environment. So as you sit here today, I hope that you listen to these stories and you think about the ways that you can also code for America in your daily lives, whether in high school, in college, or even potentially as future workers in local government. And for those of you that are working in local government, I hope this sheds a perspective that there are new ways to do things and there are new ways to leverage technology to make government work better for the people, by the people, and of the people. So let me first, if I can, switch over to the slides. I wanted to introduce you to Miss Rita. Miss Rita is a citizen who lives in New Orleans. She's great. If you want to know what she does every day, she spends 2 hours walking around New Orleans trying to map blighted properties. And so what you're looking at in front of her is actually her information management system, right? That's her IT system. It's unlikely in many of your minds that that would also be the same type of IT system that the local government used. Well, it is, and it's because of the lack of technology that was capable and capacity in the city to be able to use technology like that. But Miss Rita and citizens like her care a lot about vacant properties, right? They care about it for a number of reasons. So if you've ever been to New Orleans, you know that blight is a problem. It's been a systemic problem for the city, both before and after Hurricane Katrina. And citizens care a lot about blighted property because a lot of times it brings crime. And so imagine if you're a homeowner who lives on a street full of blighted properties, you may not feel safe. Even more so if you're a local business owner who is on a street full of blighted properties, people may not want to come do business with you because of the fear and concern of crime. So these are real concerns. These are concerns that citizens and local governments care a lot about. Well, the interesting thing about this, though, is the mayor had the same question. He wanted to know where all of the blighted properties were in his community. In fact, as he was running for office, he made a commitment that during his term, he would help solve over 100,000 blighted homes. And so he turned to his CIO, a great guy named Alan Square, a really smart guy, and he said to Alan, I want to know when I can have a map that will help me see all of the blighted properties in our community. And more importantly, I want to be able to see what the status is. And so Alan, saying that to him, said, you know what, I want the exact same thing. And in fact, we've tried to look at opportunities like that. But the problem is, it would take me 3 years and as much as $2 million to build a system like that. Well, our organization, Code for America, we send fellows in to work with local governments, and this is what happened when we partnered with the city of New Orleans. Our fellows built this. This is an application called Blight Status. It's a simple, easy-to-use interface that allows citizens the ability to put in any address in any part of the city, and it pulls back information about the property. It also pulls back information that helps them understand, is the property blighted? Is it vacant? And more importantly, what is the city doing about it? The point, though, isn't that the application does anything cool, right? It's simple, it's pretty straightforward. But the point is this. This is what Fast Company said. They said the app proposes a new kind of more productive communication between the two groups that moves past an angry and frustrated citizen on one end and a paralyzed city on the other. And so Alan Square came to our conference. We host an annual conference every year called the Code for America Summit. And Alan Square came up on stage and he said this. He said, the app, Blight Status, changed the conversation. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you all about today, which is how can we change the conversation? How can we use technology and engage citizens in new ways that changes the conversation? How can you move in fundamentally different ways that engage citizens like Miss Rita and enables government to do new things through the use of technology. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about our organization, Code for America. We are a startup nonprofit based in San Francisco. We're about 4.5 years old. And this was actually our first sign that our chief of staff drew with watercolor pens before we had a graphics designer. So even though we're a tech startup firm, we understand what it's like to sometimes be scrappy and have to do things on your own. But we started in 2009 with this general notion, right? Which is, how can you bring citizens and technology to bear to reinvent the way that it works in solving the needs of government through either engaging citizens in new ways, better providing services to citizens, or through eliminating some of the bureaucratic systems that work in municipal government. So the notion is this, right? It's this Peace Corps for geeks, right? We put fellows in year-long fellowships with cities to work hand in hand with local government to see what's possible and to try new things. Similarly, we're engaging citizens around the globe, volunteers, citizens just like you, just like me, who want to come together to bring their capacity, their skills, and their talents to bear in helping solve government problems. So imagine it, technologists, developers, designers, entrepreneurs, students, all coming together to think about and solve problems using technology and citizens' perspectives. And that's what I would share with you are ways that we can fundamentally do things together. So if you think about it, right, technology is becoming more real. It's more physical in our day-to-day lives. And so we have that as an opportunity to think about how we can do things differently. So in 2011, we launched our first year of the fellowships, and we were in 3 cities. In 2012, we were in 8 cities. Last year, we were in 9. And this year, we have fellows working in 8 cities and 2 states, continuing to find new ways to try to do new things. So hopefully, those of you that are students will have the opportunity one day to look ahead and think about how you can be fellows, working hand in hand with local government to solve these problems. But even more so, in advance of that, you have the opportunity to join brigades, right? These are Code for America organizations where we engage citizens in being able to volunteer in their local communities. Today we have brigades in over 50 states or 50 cities around the globe and a total group of over 4,000 volunteers. These are individuals that come together on the weekends, come together on Saturday and Sundays and Monday nights to work hand in hand with local government using technology in new ways. So what I wanted to do is share with you a little bit about what we're learning, things that have and haven't worked, but more importantly, show you what's possible as you think about redefining citizenship in the digital age. So we started in 2011 with the goal of trying to be more responsive to citizens. And we didn't exactly know what we would encounter, and we didn't know everything that we thought we would. So we hired guys like this. So this is Max. For any of you who are active in the development communities, you may know Max. He is a smart guy. He's in fact one of the most talented open source developers. Well, he's terrific, but the problem for Max was he didn't know how to tie a tie. So those of you sitting in the room today, you can probably tell which of the individuals here are in local government, right? They tend to wear ties. Well, similarly in Boston, where we sent Max, the mayor and the office, in the mayor's office, all wear ties. And so what we found early on was you have to have context for which you work in, and you have to figure out ways that you can be effective. So if that means putting on a tie, it means that you're now able to go about some things in a more effective way. So we sent Max and 4 of his peers to the city of Boston. They went with the primary goal of trying to unlock data about public school systems, and specifically student data. Well, as you can imagine, they ran into a lot of privacy concerns and a lot of legal hurdles, which wasn't unexpected, but it actually ended up becoming so limiting that we weren't able to advance a project in that. Well, because we have a process that we call focusing on emergent outcomes, our fellows were able to interact with and engage with hundreds of citizens to understand the problems that these citizens encountered in working with the school system. And so coincidentally, at the same time, the mayor's office and the city of Boston came under some pretty great scrutiny. And there was a Boston Globe article that said the process by which students and parents can make decisions about what schools their kids can go to is way too complicated and way too convoluted. Well, these are really important decisions, right? Where you all go to school and where your parents decide to live and help you enroll in school are all significant problems. Well, the problem is that they had to rely on a piece of paper like this, right? This is a 38-page PDF that was mailed to citizens in Boston. So I can hardly read it from here. I'm sure that most of you can hardly even read it from here, and it's on a gigantic, screen. Well, the problem was that it was too complicated to use that. And so parents actually asked our fellows, how can you help us change this system? So our fellows built this. This is Discover BPS. It's like Yelp, but for schools, right? It's now a simple, easy-to-use interface that allows parents to easily get access to information about the schools that their kids can attend, the rules in which they need to use to apply. And this is, again, another example of how we're seeing the conversation change. So I shared this with you for a couple of reasons. This is actually why we're hearing from our fellows and why we're hearing from citizens that they want to engage with Code for America. So Scott Silverman, who was a 2011 fellow, said, I believe that interfaces to government can be simple, beautiful, and easy to use. So the reason that I share this with you is for two reasons, right? Discover BPS is a great example of interfaces to government that are simple, beautiful, easy to use, and indicative of the new way that people want to use technology to engage with citizens or with government and make decisions. The other reason that I wanted to mention this is because we go in and we work with and work on behalf of our local government partners. And so we asked the local government, if you had done this, how long would it have taken and how many years or how much time and money would it have taken? And they said it would have likely taken us 2 years and $2 million. Well, we sent a team of fellows in, and within 6 weeks of being there, they were able to create a minimum viable product for an investment far, far less than $2 million. And that is, again, indicative of the new way that you can leverage technology and principles of building technology to create new solutions. So what we're trying to do is show what's possible for governments. Show them what's possible in the way that you engage citizens in designing and developing services, but also the way that you can engage citizens in understanding the needs and priorities that they have as you build new technology. So I wanted to share you a story about Blake and Aaron. Blake and Aaron own an ice cream shop in Santa Cruz, California. Well, the interesting thing is they wanted to open their ice cream shop in a storefront that used to be a restaurant, right? Well, in the process of going about that, they had to go fill out 23 different permits, right? They had to fill out permits like this, pieces of paper in different departments in different parts of City Hall where they had to walk around, and in most cases, input, and each of these forms were asking for the same type of information. So imagine that, right? This is an entrepreneur who wants to start a business in your community. They get frustrated and convoluted with these bureaucratic systems of filling out paper, right? And so the city of Santa Cruz asked us, how can we use technology to fundamentally change the way that the city develops relationships with entrepreneurs? So our fellows created this. This is Open Counter. Open Counter now offers governments a streamlined, simple interface that allows business owners to come in to an online portal, enter their information about their business once, and then push that information to the relevant departments and pull back all of the information. So no longer are folks having to walk around City Hall filling out as many as 30 applications with the same information. Instead, they can all do it through a simple, streamlined interface like Open Counter. They can see how much they owe and they can understand all of the permits that they're filing for. So I wanted to share this not only as an example and a perspective on what's possible in the way that governments can now provide new service to citizens, but also how technology can fundamentally change the relationship in the way that government goes about creating relationships with entrepreneurs who want to build their business in their community, want to be contributors to the tax base, and make a decision to do that in their community as compared to moving to another city that may have a simpler process. So while we're on the topic of simple, beautiful, easy to use design, let's talk about something that maybe isn't a good example of that. This is the city of Honolulu's old website, right? They were a partner of ours a couple of years ago, and they had continually gotten, concerns and questions from citizens that said, this website just doesn't work, right? It's broken. And so if you look at it, it's probably fairly instinctively, right? It's organized in verticals, departments, and agencies. Well, I'm a citizen, right? I don't know about departments and agencies, but I do know that when I go to a website, I typically am trying to solve a problem that I have or ask a question. And so the problem was, when you think about how you could do that, we actually worked with them. I should show this actually. So this is, again, if you were trying to find information about a driver's license, something that's probably fairly relevant to all of you, this is basically what you'd see, right? This is the next screen that you'd see. Well, the problem is that people, citizens like us, would come in and we couldn't make heads or tails out of this information. And so we actually decided, what if we looked to inspiration, right? We looked at gov.uk, which is a really great example of web design and new digital services. And if any of you have an opportunity, you certainly should check out gov.uk. It's a new website that the UK government is building. And so what we did is we looked at what's happening in websites like this, right? People are coming to ask questions. And so we decided, what if we actually focused on the question? So we built Honolulu Answers. Our fellows invested time in understanding the 10 most common questions that citizens had when they visited the website. Not surprising, driver's license was at the very top of it. So think about the information that you just saw a minute ago, and think about now being able to come to a website, ask a question, you see the question that you're asking, you get the relevant information that you need, and it takes you directly up. Sorry, I did it again. Can we go back again? So think about the ability to focus on the question. Well, the problem was that our fellows are only in their cities for a short amount of time, right? So they didn't have the opportunity to write text and information about all of the types of questions that citizens come to their websites about. So they asked themselves, how can we get more content into the system? Well, many of you have probably heard about hackathons, right? You pull together a group of talented developers, you create new technology, you hack these solutions together on weekends. Well, the fellows actually decided to host a write-a-thon. And over the series of their time in Honolulu, they had hundreds of people come together who wanted to help write content for the website and wanted to help write these questions. So think about it, right? You went from this disorganized system of web services to now a citizen-written website. And again, that's another example of what happens when you engage citizens in the process of developing new technologies. So I wanted to mention it both for that, but also I wanted to share with you Oakland Answers. So one of the other things that we're seeing is, because of the movement for advancing technology and engaging citizens, we're also seeing citizens be able to use that technology from other cities and replicate it and redeploy it in their own cities. And Oakland Answers is a great example of that. So a group of committed designers, developers, and technologists took that same code and they took it to their city in Oakland. And now Oakland citizens are able to benefit from a more streamlined interface to government where they can ask questions. And that's what's possible when you also use new technology and engage citizens in new ways. So the Oakland Answers was prompted and developed by the Open Oakland, which is a brigade, right? These volunteer groups of citizens that come together on the weekends to build technology. We continue to see that there's opportunities for these individuals to contribute their time and talent to really important problems that cities face. And schoolcuts.org is a great example of that. This was developed by Open Chicago, a local brigade in Chicago. And so for those of you who know anything about Chicago, you know that the school system had to, or the city and the school system had to make very, very important and very tough decisions about closing schools in local communities. So as we just talked about in Boston, people care a lot about education, right? They care a lot about their children's education, and when you close their schools and don't provide a lot of information, it creates a lot of concern, it creates a lot of confusion, and quite frankly creates a lack of trust. So what happened here is this team of talented developers were able to create a new piece of technology that used all of the same data that the city had access to, but be able to create simple interfaces that allow people to understand what school they can go to, why their current school is closing, understand the achievement scores of those other schools, and now put the power of that same data into their hands. So next, I wanted to share with you a little bit of a perspective about how Code for America and how the nation is learning from this network, right? This network of other cities and this network of civic startups. And I think what we're really finding is that we're shaping the digital age, and we're learning from these great companies in these cities about ways that you can change citizenship in the digital era. So, how many of you have ever been to a town hall? Okay, well, in a few minutes we'll find out that you guys are certainly an exception. Well, the city of Philadelphia a couple of years ago asked Code for America, how can we rethink or how can we reimagine the way that town halls work, right? Typically because they look like this. They're in small meeting rooms at City Hall where only a small number of people can go. They're at 7 o'clock at night when, quite frankly, most people don't want to go there. Well, our fellows built an app called Textizen. And later you guys will have the opportunity to meet Michelle Lee, the CEO of Textizen, who's now turned this into a flourishing civic startup. And so what Textizen did was reimagine what's possible. And so they put up posters like this, right? Posters around the city that now are able to engage people in their day-to-day life and allow people to provide feedback and input about the things that are really important to them. And so think about that, right? Most governments don't have capabilities to engage people directly where they are. So through signs like this on buses, on bus stops, at City Hall, while people are waiting in line, they now have the ability to provide that feedback. And so Textizen is a simple SMS application, so anyone can text, right? Not just those with smartphones, and I'll share with you a little bit about why that's important. But the point is that, again, it's changing the conversation. It's allowing people, new people, not specifically those same 50 people that come to town halls, to participate in really important decisions about their city. So next I wanted to share with you just a few stats because I think that we are really at a process of redefining what it means to be living in the digital era or the digital age. So as most of you probably know, the use of the internet is certainly on the rise, right? 86% of Americans have access to the internet, and that's even growing among older populations, right? But what I think is really important is the amount of mobile usage. And so 91% of adults have access to a phone with texting capability, right? Nearly half, more than half of all Americans have access to a smartphone. And so when you think about that, it's really amazing, especially when you know that a vast majority of the lower income populations that are getting access to the internet are getting it by way of their phones. So the other reason I share this is because this bottom stat is pretty interesting, right? 78% of teens, let's see that. How many of you have a phone with texting, right? Okay, now, how many of you send more than 100 texts a day? Come on, right? Okay, I know this is true, right? I have two cousins who live in Denver. One's 14 and one's 12, and we've always been fortunate to have a great relationship. And so I often text them just to find out how their day is, and they'll send me notes. Well, I actually had to turn off the read receipts on my iPhone, because if I read a text message from my cousin and I didn't reply, she sent me another text back saying, why haven't you replied? You read my text, right? So these are the types of immediate feedback loops that citizens and this new generation of citizens are becoming accustomed to. Yet in most cases, we're finding that governments don't have the ability to leverage strong feedback loops. And so what I wanted to share with you is a little bit about how that can become really important. And I think that the punchline to this is 11% of adults have gone to public meetings, right? So whenever you hear government say it's the same 10 people that come to public meetings, they're actually lying. It's the same 11 people that keep coming to public meetings. But the problem is that 48% of adults have never been to a public meeting. And so when you think about the ability to use phone technology, whether texting, smartphone-enabled apps or devices, you now have a way to fundamentally engage with people in new ways. And I think that's interesting for a couple of other reasons. I would argue that most governments, whether they're federal or local, aren't equipped to handle that type of feedback loop, right? And most of us as citizens probably underestimate the amount of times that we actually engage with local government on a daily basis, right? Whether you drive on the street, walk on a road, or walk into a building, most of those are built by, designed by, or are somehow permitted or codified by local government. Yet most all of those interactions don't have a way for us to provide immediate feedback. And I think that's interesting for a couple of reasons. It's actually helping us understand, oh, sorry, one more time. Do you mind going back? Thank you. I'm trigger happy up here. But we're finding that there's actually this continuum of interactions. And companies like MindMixer and Texazen are helping us understand that there's actually new ways of engaging citizens through technology, and that as you do that, citizens now are more likely to advance and come to public meetings. So this continuum of interaction becomes really interesting and really relevant. So certainly you have these implicit ways of giving feedback, whether explicitly or implicitly. Also, you have the ability to engage in more discussions and provide feedback, right? You certainly see that as more and more elected officials become active on Facebook, on Twitter. Platforms like MindMixer are engagement platforms that allow citizens to always contribute their ideas to really important things. But then you also have these formal ways where you go in, whether it's voting, going in to file for permits, going in to get a driver's license, right? So there's this continuum of ways that we interact with government. Well, one of the problems is, in many ways, this is still what government looks like. The left is a DMV, the right is an Apple store, right? So which one would you rather go into, right? Which one inspires more energy, gives you more confidence? Well, the problem is that citizens are still interacting with local governments in ways that look like this. And this perpetuates the lack of trust that some citizens have, right? These convoluted bureaucratic systems, I wait in line, no one has information, as compared to you walk into a Genius store and there's instantly like 12 people that are ready to help you. They have access to all of the information in their devices. And so we're finding out that experience also really matters. Similarly, we've talked about the importance of design, right? The left is a traditional website, the right is the new nyc.gov. Which one would you rather interact with? Which one intuitively makes more sense? So I share all of that in addition to thinking about the fact and the use of language, and I'll share with you in a little bit of some more perspective on the importance of language. But companies like MindMixer are also finding that as you provide the ability for folks to engage in questions that have thoughtful and positive language, people are more likely to engage. So when you talk about we and us and winning and doing things together, people are more likely to engage than when you say cutting, losing, moving, right? So think about the way that you communicate today and the way that you can use positive words to engage new folks. And I mention all of that because I think that what we're seeing is that there's this push for affirmation and this movement of feedback loops, right? So as you affirm people through feedback loops, they're more likely to now re-engage, which is really important because that's typically not something that local governments have been good at. So now we're at 2013, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about the way that we're seeing technology help drive social outcomes. So I want you all to imagine that you are walking into a grocery store, right? You walk in, a lady comes off of the public bus, walks in with her 3 kids, goes about buying all of her groceries, right? Something pretty common and something important to her life. Yet as she walks up to the cashier and swipes her card, it's declined. Well, the card that she has are actually a card with access to her food stamps. So imagine what goes through that mother's mind at that instant. She's standing in line with her kids, and she doesn't have food, and she doesn't have access to food benefits because her card is somehow declined. Think about the embarrassment, the concern, the fear that goes through her mind, right? Well, that was a real problem for a lot of citizens in San Francisco. And so the city of San Francisco asked us, how can we use technology to help change the interaction between citizens that are typically not reapplying for food benefits? And so we said, okay, we'd love to work on that. Well, this is what was happening, right? This is what was getting mailed to 1,500 San Francisco residents every month, right? It's a form that doesn't necessarily use the most positive language. And quite frankly, it actually uses, in some ways, fairly offensive and very assertive language that people didn't know how to respond to. More so, they didn't know what they actually were supposed to do. The other problem is it was getting sent to an address that they may no longer live at. So our fellows, in the process of engaging with and understanding what citizens wanted, we found out that, again, citizens were more likely to keep their same cell phone number than they were their same address. And so our fellows said, what if we now can change the process to allow people to be notified by mail, also receive email updates, or potentially engage in SMS texting reminders? And so the result is this. This is Promptly. It's, again, a simple, easy to use interface that bridges the digital divide and puts relevant and important information in the hands of people, not only when they need it, but before they need it. And so as a result of Promptly, we're now seeing that a number of citizens in their cities are actually re-enrolling for food benefits. So they're not going to walk into a grocery store and not have the ability to buy food for their families. And that's what's changing the conversation and building trust and engaging citizens in new ways. So finally, I wanted to share with you this. This is a quote that our chief of staff mentioned a little while back, and it really stuck with me. It's from Auden. For any of you that have taken history recently, you may remember his name, but he's talking about the Spanish Revolution, right? And he was talking about how the city is theirs. And if you want to make it better, you have to make it your own, right? So he had this line, "We're left alone with our day." When I first heard that, I kind of instinctively thought, man, we're screwed, right? Like, we're left alone with our day and time is short. But then I reread it, and I read it again, and this line, "time is short," right? So the point is this. We live in a democracy. We all have the ability to make government what we want it to be. Tim O'Reilly, who's a good friend of ours and in many ways the godfather of Government 2.0 and kind of the old godfather of the internet, he says this. He said, "Government is what we do together." And so what I wanted you to think about is how can you in your daily lives help make government what you want, right? You have the power, you have the ability, you have new tools and new technology at your hands. And more importantly, I want you to understand that coding for America isn't just something that happens in San Francisco and Philadelphia and Chicago. It's happening in cities all around America. And it's happening because of people like you and people like me who want to leverage technology, leverage our mind share, and make government work together or better for the people and by the people. Thank you.
We did get a couple questions on Twitter, which is pretty exciting. Thanks so much for staying engaged with our hashtag. Many citizens don't have access to technology. Will there be centers or something of the like where they can access some of these programs?
Absolutely. So, certainly digital access is a very important issue. We actually had a project last year in Kansas City, Missouri, which many of you may know was the first city to get Google Fiber, which is gigabit speed internet. And so as a part of that, we've started to see private sector organizations like Google really take an interest in digital access and digital literacy. And what we're actually finding now is that libraries continue to build as these hubs of digital access, but also as these new hubs for citizen engagement. So I think that you're going to continue to see organizations like libraries continue to be able to make digital access available through devices. Certainly, we've seen examples in cities like Oakland. There's cities in like Los Angeles now that are making every student have access to very low-cost devices. These little smart tablets where now students can get access to kind of mesh Wi-Fi networks across the city, but now can actually do stuff because they have a tablet device. So certainly, digital access is going to continue to drive forward, and getting folks equipped with the right information is going to be really important.
Luke, one of the things you haven't talked about a lot and really appreciate it, but one of the things that on the other side in terms of the people who are in office and doing stuff now, it's something if you came to me, I'd look at one of the first things that I say, okay, this is great, but what's the cost?
Sure. So we get a lot of questions about cost.
Good.
So we actually have a unique model. We typically ask cities or local governments to pay 1/2 of the investment of a Code for America fellowship. Our total cost for a fellowship is $440,000. And so the reason that we ask for a 50-50 split between the city and community partners is for a couple of reasons, right? It lowers the burden for the local government. It also enables the citizens and the community to step up and say that we're interested in helping create safe places for innovation. And we want to help take on these tough challenges, and we want to enable local government to use technology in new ways. So we've really seen that as a similar cost model working in a lot of cities. The other thing is we have a variety of other programs like our brigades, which actually don't require an investment from cities, but actually can really drive significant efforts forward. So we're continually finding ways that we can work with and support cities across that spectrum.
What's your biggest hurdle? I'm surprised the privacy thing isn't something that rears its head every once in a while.
Yeah, so privacy, always comes up. We actually have, fellows like Reed who now are working with companies like RecordTrack who are helping make data more accessible to citizens and helping engage citizens in the process of making FOIA requests and using that information more accessible to individuals within City Hall so that they can prioritize open data sets. Privacy is always going to be important, but we do fundamentally believe that most of the data that is out there is taxpayer data and is in essence public data. Certainly there are ways in which cities can go about creating policies that open up data but are sensitive to the kind of private data around citizens. So it's always a hurdle, but we think that there are ways to challenge it and to use technology smartly to be able to protect people's privacy.
A few more questions
Sure.
come in. How would I get Code for America into my city was one of the questions.
Great. So we actually have a variety of ways that cities can engage with Code for America. The first is if cities are interested in the fellowship program. We're actually recruiting for cities for 2015. That process ends at the end of March, so any city interested in applying for the fellowship should visit codeforamerica.org/cities to be able to go actually ahead and apply for the fellowship. That certainly is the most intensive way. The other way is if cities want to engage with citizens and help form these brigades. We have links to that information from our website. And we can help cities actually pinpoint strategic leaders that are technologists, developers, or entrepreneurs in their communities and help them create a collaborative arrangement that allows those citizens to actually contribute and collaborate with local government. The third way is cities that want to share best practices and want to engage in the national dialogue. They can also go to Code for America on the same page, codeforamerica.org/cities. They actually can join the conversation and get access to some of the amazing things that are happening from both the civic startups, but from individuals like Mark Head, who you'll all hear from later on today, about what Philadelphia is doing, about what Jacksonville is doing, things that are happening all around the country that can share new perspectives.
That kind of ties into another question we got, which is who is identifying the problem? Citizens, Code for America, or the local government itself?
Yep, that's great. So we ask cities to help us understand the problems that they're facing. Typically in the process of a city applying, we have 2, if not 3 conversations with them to really identify that problem. What's unique about the Code for America Fellowship is we don't ask people to come to us with a specific application in mind, but rather to the point of the question, we ask cities to help us define problems, and more importantly, to define the goals and outcomes that they want to see as a result of engaging citizens and using technology in new ways. So all of that is driven by the cities. Certainly in some cases, we have seen national areas of opportunity, in large part that's sometimes driven by a national dialogue of cities or by foundations who have specific interests in verticals like education, health, or criminal justice. So as we have opportunities like that, in some cases we do work with cities to determine whether or not they'd be interested in solving a problem like that, but everything that we do is in pursuit of the city.
How about in the future, do you see technology taking over professions such as some in the education field?
Wow.
Some of these may be more broad, but it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on them.
Yeah, so I'm not an ed tech guy by any means, but I do think that there are certainly examples where technology is allowing parents, students, and teachers to interact and engage more consistently to support education. Certainly, again, seeing examples like Oakland and Los Angeles, Kansas City, Missouri as well, are now equipping students with these handheld devices that allow them to have access to web services and to be able to engage with new digital services as a way to continue their learning. So I certainly think that's where you're going to see technology. You have other things like Khan Academy that are making a huge difference in being able to support citizens and parents and students with access to educational content. So my suspicion is that technology will continue to play a bigger and bigger place in society around education, but I don't think that it'll ever replace the profession.
I wanted wanted to ask if this applies to healthcare for people who are handicapped when they're trying to receive benefits like transportation, which would require them to go somewhere to get this benefit.
Sure.
Does this apply to them so they don't have to go down to like a center or something?
Yep, absolutely. So, you know, we again believe that fundamentally technology can be used to help solve any spectrum of citizen engagement with government services. So, whether that's, you know, for handicap services to, you know, anything from food, health-related, criminal justice, access to crime data, anything like that, fundamentally we think can be enhanced by it. We actually have a team of fellows that worked in California last year that have created basically an API, which is technology to connect all of these disparate data sets, and they're now able to use that data to more efficiently help citizens get access to social services, and to be able to make that information available through United Ways or through 311 systems or 211 systems, where typically citizens are calling to get that type of information. So certainly we're making strides in that area, and I think there's continually new ways to do it. You know, if you have specific interests or issues, I think, you know, you have the ability, because of the way that we're seeing governments become more responsive and interactive, to work with them to help them understand what the problems are that you're encountering and to share a perspective on how technology may be able to impact that problem.
Luke, what about the military side of this? There, tremendous money has been spent in the communications field, trying to make sure, one, it's secure, and two, you can handle multi-calls from all over the place. Is that something that you, how close can you get to that and following that?
So we primarily exist at the local level, so cities, counties, states. We have not had really any interaction with the federal government at this point, and probably likely won't. So I don't know that we would touch any, you know, specific thing relating to military. But certainly there are new technology companies that are actually really creating new technology that enable communication standards that certainly are out there. So,
Excuse me, there was a question over here. I apologize. Go on. I mean, where's my gavel?
Now, is Code for America only about digital upgrades for city governments, or could it also help the civil infrastructure that is failing with cities?
Interesting. So our primary purpose is to help advance the use of technology in engaging citizens, providing services to citizens. But in the process of doing that, we actually interact with and engage with all areas of local government. And so a lot of what happens through our peer network is being able to share best practices across cities, whether it's always or just about digital services or if it's about civil infrastructure. And so certainly there's more national spotlight put on all of those areas. We think, though, that there's ways that technology can enhance the use of citizen infrastructure or civil infrastructure. Text-to-Zen is a great example of that, of allowing citizens to participate in the decision-making about infrastructure problems. You'll hear later today from Neighborly, which is a civic crowdfunding platform that's actually allowing citizens to not only provide their input and advice about local infrastructure projects, but also to say that they're willing to help invest in advancing some of those infrastructure projects. Well, I'll be around all day, and again, you're going to have the opportunity to talk to people who are actually doing this in their day-to-day lives, who've chosen this as a profession, who can shed a lot more light. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the day.